I never thought my life would turn into something out of a bad soap opera. If you had told me a year ago that my wife, my Nancy, would betray me in the worst possible way, I would have laughed in your face. We had been together for 11 years, married for 8. We had 2 beautiful kids, Ethan, 6, and Olivia, 4, and a life I thought was, if not perfect, at least stable, but looking back, I see it now. The signs. The little things I brushed off because I trusted her. It started with the phone. Nancy was never one of those women glued to her screen. She used to leave it lying around the house, face up, no password, answering texts in front of me without a second thought. Then, about 6 months ago, the changes started. First, she set a passcode. Innocent enough, I figured she just wanted more privacy. Then she started keeping it on her at all times, even taking it into the bathroom. If I so much as glanced in its direction, she would tilt the screen away. Then, the late nights began. Nancy had always been dedicated to her job, but suddenly, she was working late a lot more often. I remember joking, "Are you having an affair with your job?" She laughed, a little too hard, and kissed me on the cheek. "Of course not, babe," she said. "You're just being paranoid." I wasn't. I just didn't know it. At first, I told myself I was imagining things. A bad day at work would turn into me overthinking, convincing myself I was being dramatic. Nancy wasn't cheating, she was just busy, but the little things started piling up. It wasn't just the phone or the late nights. She started changing how she looked, and not in the normal, "I want to feel good about myself" way. Nancy was always naturally beautiful, but she never cared much for heavy makeup or fancy clothes. Then, out of nowhere, she started dressing up. Not for me. Not for date nights. Just, out of the blue. Tight skirts. Low-cut tops. Perfume so strong I could smell it the second she walked past me. I asked her about it once. She laughed and said, "Oh, come on, Mike. A woman can't feel good about herself." I felt stupid for even questioning it. But deep down, something wasn't sitting right. Then came the gym. Nancy had never been the workout type. Sure, we went for walks, maybe the occasional jog together, but she was never obsessed with fitness. Suddenly, she was going to the gym 5 days a week. She told me it was for her health. Said she wanted to be the best version of herself. But the biggest red flag, she never let me come with her. Every time I offered, she had an excuse. "Oh, you'd slow me down. I go with the girls from work. It's my me time." And the worst part? Her body wasn't changing. I don't mean that in a bad way. Nancy had always been in good shape, but if she was working out as much as she claimed, there should have been some kind of difference. Instead, she just came home flushed, energized, and weirdly happy. She was seeing someone. I just didn't know who, but that changed soon enough. It was a Tuesday night. Ethan and Olivia were already in bed. Nancy was working late, again. I was on the couch, watching TV, when her iPad lit up on the coffee table. A message. It was from a number with no name attached. Just a simple text, "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you." My heart nearly stopped. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding. There was a part of me that wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe it was an old friend messing around. Maybe it wasn't even her iPad. But then, she replied. The text bubble popped up, then disappeared. Then popped up again. I could see her typing, "Me too, can't wait for next time." That's when I knew that my hands were shaking when I grabbed the iPad. I didn't even think, I just opened it. No password. No security. It was all right there, hundreds of messages, pictures, videos, Nancy and some guy. Some other man. His name was Chris, and from what I could see, this wasn't new. This wasn't some fling. They had been doing this for months. I sat there, scrolling through the proof of my wife's betrayal, feeling like my entire world had just caved in. I had 2 choices, confront her right away, dig deeper, and something in me, some primal instinct, told me to wait, because if she was lying about this, who knew what else she was lying about? I should have been furious. I should have called Nancy that very second and let her know I had seen everything, but I didn't. Something in me told me to wait. To think. To dig deeper. If she was lying about this, what else was she hiding? I took a deep breath and kept scrolling. The messages stretched back for months. Some were short and flirtatious, thinking about you, while others were long, graphic descriptions of what they had done together. Things I thought she only did with me. I felt sick. Then I found the pictures, Nancy in hotel rooms. In a car. In our house. On our bed, she had sex with him in the place where we slept. Where we laughed. Where we built a life together. That's when the anger hit. A deep, burning rage that made my hands shake. I wanted to smash the iPad. I wanted to throw it through the window and watch it shatter like my marriage had just shattered. But I didn't, because now, it wasn't just about knowing. It was about catching her. When Nancy finally came home that night, I was sitting on the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone. She walked in, her hair messy, her makeup a little too perfect, like she had just freshened up before coming inside. She gave me that sweet, tired smile she always did and said, "Long day at work. I'm exhausted." She kissed me on the cheek. I wanted to throw up. I forced myself to smile. "Yeah? Anything interesting happen?" She shook her head. "Same old. Meetings, emails, the usual." Liar. I looked at her closely, searching for something, anything that would give her away. But she was too good at this. Too practiced. So, I acted normal. I didn't ask questions. I didn't change my behavior. Instead, I started watching. For the next few days, I paid attention to everything she did. Every excuse she made. Every phone call she took in the other room. And then, on Friday night, I got my chance. Nancy had a routine now, one I hadn't noticed before. She would put the kids to bed, say she was going to take a bath, then disappear into the bathroom for almost an hour. But she wasn't taking a bath, she was texting him. That night, when she slipped into the bathroom with her phone, I waited a few minutes, then grabbed the iPad. Sure enough, her messages were syncing in real time. I could see every word. "Nancy, I miss you. I hate not being able to see you tonight. Chris, same, babe. You looked so sexy last night. I can still taste you." I gripped the iPad so hard I thought it would crack. Then, she sent another text that made my blood run cold. "Nancy, I feel bad lying to Mike all the time. But I have to. For now." For now, what the hell did that mean? I had seen enough. I put the iPad down, stood up, and walked to the bathroom door. My heart was pounding, my hands were shaking, but I didn't care. This was it. I knocked once. "Nancy?" There was a pause. Then, "Yeah?" I twisted the knob. It wasn't locked. I pushed the door open. She was sitting on the edge of the tub, phone in her hands, eyes wide in shock. "Who are you texting?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. She scrambled to turn the phone over, but it was too late. I had already seen everything. I looked her in the eyes and said the words that would change everything. "I know." For a moment, there was silence. Just me, standing in the bathroom doorway, and Nancy, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. She blinked at me, her face carefully neutral, like she was deciding which lie to go with. "Know what?" she asked, feigning confusion. I stepped closer, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. "I know about Chris. I know about the messages, the late nights, the hotels." Nancy's face drained of color. She gripped the phone even tighter, but still she didn't admit it. Instead, she let out a forced laugh. "Mike, what are you talking about?" I pulled my phone from my pocket and held up a screenshot of her messages. The ones that had synced to her iPad. The ones she had no idea I could see. Her eyes flickered to the screen. Just for a second, then she straightened up, crossed her arms, and went on the offensive. "Oh my God, are you going through my messages now? That's an invasion of privacy, Mike. I can't believe you would." "Don't." My voice was low, dangerous. "Don't even try to flip this on me." She pressed her lips together, then, without missing a beat, she started lying. it's not what you think, she said, shaking her head. Chris is just a friend. He's been helping me through some things. I let out a bitter laugh. Right. Friends send each other texts like "I can still taste you." That shut her up. For a moment, then she switched tactics. Fine. I made a mistake. I was lonely, and he was there for me, but it was never serious. I clenched my jaw. You've been sleeping with him for months, Nancy. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Tears welled in her eyes. But I knew Nancy. I had spent years with her. I could tell the difference between real tears and performance tears. She wasn't sorry, she was just sorry she got caught. Mike, please, I never meant to hurt you, she whispered, stepping toward me. You have to believe me. I love you. I love our family. I stared at her. This woman, the mother of my children, my wife, the person I had trusted the most, was looking me in the eyes and still lying that I was done. So, I gave her one last chance. Tell me the truth, I said, my voice cold. Right now. The whole truth. Nancy bit her lip. Her fingers twitched around her phone. Then, finally, she sighed and said, okay. I'll tell you everything. But I had no idea just how bad it was going to be. Nancy took a deep breath, like she was preparing to do something incredibly difficult. But I knew her too well. This wasn't guilt. This wasn't remorse. This was damage control. She looked at me, eyes glistening, and said, it didn't mean anything. I clenched my fists. Then why did it last for months? She hesitated just for a second. Then she kept going. I was lonely, Mike. You were always so busy with work and the kids, and I felt like I was fading into the background. Chris was just someone to talk to. I held up the phone. Talking? Is that what you were doing in hotel rooms? In our house? Her face flinched, just slightly, but she recovered quickly. Okay, fine. Yes, we slept together. But it wasn't about love. It was just an escape. A mistake that got out of hand. A mistake, that word made my blood boil. A mistake is spilling coffee. A mistake is missing an appointment. You don't accidentally meet up with a man for months, lie to your husband, and destroy a family. I shook my head. Why him, Nancy? Where did you even meet this guy? She sighed. At the gym. Of course. The gym. The one she never wanted me to go to. I gritted my teeth. So, what, you just saw him one day and thought, hey, I should ruin my marriage for this guy? She snapped. No, Mike. It wasn't like that. Her voice was sharp now, defensive. The fake tears were gone. This was the real Nancy. The one who didn't like being cornered. I didn't plan for this to happen, okay? But Chris, he made me feel wanted. He made me feel alive. Those words hit like a gut punch. Like I had been making her feel dead this whole time. That I was about to say something I might have regretted when she suddenly dropped the real bombshell. I was going to tell you. I froze. What? She looked away, her fingers twisting together. I was trying to find the right time. Chris and we talked about it, and we thought. She stopped, like she had said too much. My stomach dropped. We thought, that meant there was a plan. That I took a step closer, my pulse pounding in my ears. You thought what, Nancy? She hesitated, then, quietly, she said it. I was going to leave. Silence. That I just stood there, trying to process what she had just said. She was going to leave, not just me. Not just our marriage, but our kids. Our life. Nancy must have seen the devastation on my face because she quickly backtracked. Mike, I didn't mean it like that. I wasn't sure. I was just thinking about it. I held up a hand. Don't. Just stop talking, ****, but I needed to know more. You and Chris, what was the plan? I asked, my voice eerily calm. Nancy shifted uncomfortably. We talked about moving in together. A cold chill ran through me. Moving in together? She wasn't just having an affair. She was planning a whole new life with him. What about Ethan and Olivia? I asked, my voice shaking. She hesitated again, then, she finally admitted it. We were going to take them with us. I had never felt anger like this before. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just an affair. She was planning to rip our children away from me and start a whole new life with her lover. I took a step back, gripping the doorframe so hard my knuckles turned white. You were going to take them? I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Nancy nodded, but she wouldn't look at me. I was scared to tell you. I didn't know how you'd react. Chris and I thought. I cut her off. You and Chris thought what? That you could just steal my kids and run off into the sunset? That I'd just let that happen? She rubbed her temples like I was the one being unreasonable. Mike, I'm their mother. They need me. I let out a bitter laugh. Yeah. Well, they also need a mother who doesn't cheat on their father and lie to his face for months. She flinched, but I wasn't done. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. I had two choices: stay calm and figure out my next move, explode and risk losing everything. And that's when it hit me that I needed to beat her at her own game. I wasn't just going to let her take my kids. I was going to take them first. I stood there, staring at Nancy, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. She had just admitted that she was planning to take Ethan and Olivia and run off with her lover, Chris. That was it. That was the final straw. I wasn't going to let this woman, this liar, this cheater, this betrayer take my children away from me. But I had to be smart. If I exploded, if I screamed and yelled and threw her out, she'd have time to fight back. She'd twist everything around and make herself the victim. That was what she was good at. So I did something that took every ounce of self-control I had. I nodded. You know what? I said, forcing my voice to stay even. I get it. Nancy's eyes flickered with suspicion. You do? I shrugged. Yeah. I haven't been the best husband. Maybe you needed something I wasn't giving you. I just wish you had told me sooner. She stared at me, studying my face, trying to see if I was being serious. I could see the gears turning in her head. She didn't trust me. Good. I didn't trust her either, but I had just done exactly what I needed to do. Because now, she wouldn't see it coming. When I took the kids and left first, for the next few days, I played my role perfectly. I acted calm. I didn't bring up Chris again. I didn't ask any questions. I pretended I was willing to talk things through like mature adults. And Nancy? She bought it. She stopped being defensive. Stopped watching me so closely. She thought I was accepting things. Meanwhile, I was preparing my escape. I did 3 things. I met with a lawyer. I explained everything: the affair, the messages, the fact that she was planning to take the kids. The lawyer didn't sugarcoat it. You need to act fast. If she leaves first and takes them, it's going to be an uphill battle to get them back. I gathered evidence. Screenshots of texts, emails, everything. I needed proof that she was the one betraying this family, not me. I planned my exit. I wasn't just going to take the kids and run. I needed to do it legally. And then just when I thought I had control of the situation, something happened that changed everything. It was Saturday night. The kids were asleep. Nancy was in bed, scrolling through her phone, probably texting Chris. I was in the kitchen, pretending to wash dishes, my mind racing with my plan. I was going to leave with Ethan and Olivia in the morning. I had already packed their bags in the trunk of my car. Then, her phone dinged. A text. I wasn't trying to look. I had seen enough of her messages to last a lifetime, but my eyes caught something. Nancy, I can't wait anymore. I'm telling him tomorrow. Be ready. Telling me what? My stomach twisted. I didn't have time to think. I just acted. I walked into the bedroom. Who was that? Nancy quickly turned her phone over. Huh? Your text, I said, my voice ice cold. Who are you telling what tomorrow? Her face went pale. Nothing, she said too quickly. Just a work thing. Lied. I took a deep breath. You're a terrible liar, Nancy. She swallowed hard. Mike, don't do this. Let's just talk in the morning. She was stalling, and then I knew she was going to leave first. She had sensed something was off. Maybe she noticed the way I was watching her. Maybe she could feel the shift in power, but I wasn't going to let her win. That I couldn't wait until morning anymore. Nancy thought she was 1 step ahead, but I was already 10 steps ahead of her. That I walked out of the bedroom, grabbed my keys, and went straight to Ethan and Olivia's room. That I picked Olivia up first, holding her against me as she slept. Then I shook Ethan awake. Hey, buddy, I whispered. Daddy needs you to wake up, okay? He rubbed his eyes. Where are we going? We're going on a little adventure. I carried them both out to the car, buckled them in, and got behind the wheel. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. That I looked at my phone one last time. Nancy's text stared back at me. I can't wait anymore. I'm telling him tomorrow. Be ready. Too late, Nancy. I'm already gone. That I pulled out of the driveway as quietly as I could, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. In the back seat, Ethan was still half asleep, his head resting against the window. Olivia was out cold, her tiny chest rising and falling in the dim light of the dashboard. My kids. My world. And I was taking them away before Nancy could. The road stretched ahead, dark and empty. I had no real destination yet, just a need to get away. But as I turned the corner out of our neighborhood, a terrible thought hit me. What if she wakes up and calls the cops? Nancy was still their mother. No matter what she had done, if she told the police I had kidnapped them, things could get messy. That I needed a plan. And I needed it fast. That I pulled into a gas station a few miles down the road, took out my phone, and typed a quick text to Nancy before she even realized we were gone. Me, hey, took the kids to visit my parents for the weekend. They've been asking to see them. Didn't want to wake you. A lie. But a good one. If I played this right, she wouldn't panic, at least, not right away. I just needed time to figure out my next move. I turned off my phone's location services and bought a burner phone from the gas station. Then, just in case, I used my credit card one last time at the pump before paying cash for everything else. If Nancy started tracking me, I wanted her looking in the wrong direction. Then, I drove. I had no idea where to go. I couldn't go to my parents, they lived too close, and Nancy would immediately look for me there. I couldn't stay in a hotel either. Credit card records would make it easy for her to find us. Then I thought of Jake Carter. My oldest friend. The guy I had grown up with, the guy who had been my best man at our wedding. He had a cabin about 3 hours away, deep in the woods. No neighbors, no nosy townsfolk, and best of all, Nancy didn't know about it. I grabbed the burner phone, dialed Jake's number, and prayed he was still awake. Hello? His voice was groggy. It's me, I said. Mike? What's wrong? I took a deep breath. I need a place to stay. Just for a few days. It's about Nancy. There was a pause. Then, say no more. Get here whenever you can. I had my safe house, now, I just had to make it there before Nancy realized what I had done. 2 hours into the drive, my burner phone rang. It was Nancy. I hesitated before answering. Hello? Silence. Then, her voice, shaky, quiet. Where are you? I gripped the wheel. Told you. Taking the kids to see my parents. More silence. Then, she said something that made my stomach drop. Don't lie to me, Mike. I know you took them. And I know you're not coming back. My jaw clenched. And what were you planning to do, Nancy? Take them away from me? Start a new life with Chris? She exhaled sharply. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, I shot back. I saw the messages, Nancy. I saw your plan. You were going to take our kids and disappear. Her voice rose. Because I was scared of you. I didn't know how you'd react. I laughed, bitter and sharp. So your solution was to rip them away from their father? She was quiet. Then, she dropped the bombshell, Mike. Chris wants custody. My body went ice cold. That I had been prepared for a lot of things, but not that. I gripped the wheel so hard I thought it would snap. Excuse me? Nancy's voice was barely above a whisper. He wants to be a part of their lives. He thinks it's better for them to be with me. With us. I saw red. You mean with him? Nancy didn't answer. For a second, I thought I was going to lose it. I thought I was going to yell and scream and say everything I had been holding back, but I didn't, because I had just learned something crucial. Chris wasn't just some side fling. That he wanted my kids, and Nancy? She was considering it. That changed everything. That I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Then, I said the most important thing I had ever said to Nancy: you listen to me. I don't care what you and Chris planned. I don't care what lies you tell yourself to sleep at night. But let me make one thing clear: you are never taking my kids from me. Silence, then, a choked breath. Mike, please. Let's just. I hung up. No more talking. No more games. Nancy had made her choice, and now, I was making mine. I hung up the phone, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Chris wants custody. Those words replayed in my head like a sick joke. As if this man, this homewrecker, had any right to my children. As if he could just slide into my life, take my wife, and now try to take my kids too. Not a chance. I glanced at the rearview mirror. Ethan was curled up in his car seat, his little face peaceful in sleep. Olivia had her tiny fingers wrapped around her stuffed rabbit. They had no idea what was happening. No idea that their mother had betrayed us all. I pressed my foot on the gas. We had to get to Jake's cabin. We had to disappear before Nancy made her next move. It was nearly 4 a.m. by the time I pulled off the highway onto a dirt road leading into the woods. Jake's cabin was deep in the forest, far from town, surrounded by trees and silence. No prying eyes. No police checkpoints. No Nancy. I parked, killed the engine, and exhaled. We had made it. I got out and carefully unbuckled Ethan and Olivia. They barely stirred. I carried Olivia in one arm while Ethan groggily clung to my shirt. The front porch light flicked on. Jake stepped out, rubbing sleep from his eyes. His face was unreadable at first, but the second he saw me, his expression softened. You look like hell, he muttered. I let out a dry laugh. I feel like it. He held the door open. Come on in. Jake's cabin was small but cozy. A wood stove in the corner, 2 bedrooms, a battered old couch that had probably been there since the 90s. It felt safe. I laid Olivia down on the couch, draped a blanket over her, then helped Ethan onto a makeshift bed in the spare room. Jake stood by the doorway, arms crossed. Tell me what's going on. I didn't hold back. I told him everything: the affair. The lies. The plan to take my kids. The fact that Chris wanted custody. By the time I was done, Jake looked furious. That's insane, he muttered, shaking his head. She actually thought you'd let some guy just take your kids? She's been lying to me for months, I said bitterly. And I don't think she's done. Jake exhaled and ran a hand through his hair. So what's the plan? You can't just stay here forever. I knew he was right. This was just a pit stop, but I wasn't going to act out of desperation. I needed to be smart. And then, as if the universe wanted to remind me that Nancy was still a threat, my burner phone buzzed. A text from Nancy: Nancy, Mike, please. We need to talk. You don't have to do this. Just come home. Please. I scoffed. We don't have to do this. She was the one who started this war. I ignored the message. Then, not even 5 minutes later, my real phone, the one I had turned off, lit up with a new notification. My bank account. A $5,000 withdrawal. I felt the blood drain from my face. Jake, I said, gripping my phone. She's trying to cut me off. I pulled up my banking app and felt sick. Nancy had drained half of our joint savings. I knew what this meant. She was lawyering up. She wasn't just playing the victim anymore. She was going on the attack. Jake peered over my shoulder. That's not good. No kidding. I clenched my jaw, thinking fast. If she's taking money, that means she's preparing to fight for custody. And if she's doing that, then my phone rang. I stared at the screen, unknown number, but I already knew who it was. I answered. "This is Mike." A woman's voice, calm, professional, but cold. "Mr. Dawson? This is Amanda Carter. I'm representing your wife, Nancy, in the matter of your separation and custody dispute." Custody dispute. I hadn't even filed anything yet. Nancy had beaten me to it. I didn't speak right away. I was too busy grinding my teeth. Jake watched me carefully, his arms crossed. Finally, I spoke. "Go on." Amanda Carter, Nancy's lawyer, continued, her tone way too smug for my liking. "We need to arrange a time for you to return the children to their mother. Given the circumstances, she has concerns about their safety and well-being." I nearly laughed. Concerns? Nancy cheated, lied, and was planning to take them away, and now she had the nerve to act like I was the bad guy? I gripped the phone. "My children are perfectly safe, Ms. Carter. Maybe you should ask Nancy why she was planning to take them and disappear with her boyfriend." There was a pause. Then, "Mike, let's be adults here. Nancy is willing to discuss an agreement amicably. But if you refuse to cooperate, we'll be forced to escalate this legally." She was threatening me. I wanted to explode. I wanted to tell this lawyer exactly where she and Nancy could shove their agreement. But instead, I breathed. Nancy had made her move. Now, it was time for mine. I forced my voice to stay calm. "I'll have my lawyer contact you." Then I hung up. Jake raised an eyebrow. "Well?" I exhaled. "She's coming for me." Jake nodded. "Then we hit her first." And that's exactly what I planned to do. I wasn't just going to fight for custody. I was going to make sure Nancy lost everything. She wanted to play dirty. She had no idea who she was messing with. She betrayed me. She tried to take my kids. Now, I was going to take back everything. I sat in Jake's cabin, staring at my phone, my mind running at 100 miles an hour. Nancy had made her move. She filed first. She drained our joint account. She hired a lawyer. She thought she had me cornered, but she had no idea who she was messing with. I turned to Jake. "I need a lawyer. A damn good one." Jake nodded. "I know a guy. Ben Callahan. A ruthless divorce attorney, known for tearing apart people who tried to screw over his clients. If Nancy wanted to play dirty, I needed someone who could fight just as dirty. I dialed the number Jake gave me. The phone rang twice before a deep, gruff voice answered. "Callahan." I didn't waste time. "I need your help. My wife's trying to take my kids, and I'm not letting that happen." There was a pause. Then, "Tell me everything." So I did. I told him about the affair. About the months of lies. About how Nancy and Chris had been planning to take my kids away and start a new life without me. Callahan listened silently, then finally said, "This is bad." "I know," I muttered. "No, I mean for her." I blinked. "Come again?" Callahan exhaled. "She's already made 2 big mistakes. 1, she drained your joint bank account. That's financial misconduct, which looks terrible in court. 2, she openly admitted in text messages that she was planning to take the kids without telling you. That's parental alienation. Judges hate that." My grip tightened around the phone. "So I have a shot." Callahan chuckled. "You don't just have a shot. If we play this right, you'll make sure she never sees full custody again." A weight lifted off my chest. I had a chance, and I was about to make my first move. First things first, I needed to file my own case. Callahan worked fast. By Monday morning, I had my own legal paperwork ready to go, but I didn't just file for custody. I filed for sole custody. I wasn't going to let Nancy have control. She had already proven she was willing to manipulate, lie, and run. She wasn't going to do that to my kids. We also put in an emergency motion blocking her from taking the children anywhere. If she tried to skip town with them, she'd be in violation of a court order. And the best part, Callahan made sure Nancy got served in the worst way possible. I was sitting in Jake's cabin when the text came through. "Nancy, what the hell is this, Mike?" You're filing for full custody? Damn right, I was. Then, almost immediately, another message. Nancy, are you trying to ruin me? We could have worked this out. I smirked. Worked this out? She didn't want to work this out when she was sneaking around with Chris, plotting to steal my kids away from me. Now, suddenly, she wanted to be civil. I didn't respond. Then, she called that I let it ring. She called again. And again until finally, I answered. Her voice was shaking. But it wasn't sadness. It was anger. Mike, you can't do this, she snapped. You have no right to take my children from me. Funny, I said, keeping my voice calm. That's exactly what you were trying to do to me. She was silent for a second. Then, her tone changed soft, pleading. Mike, don't do this. We can fix things. I almost laughed. Fix things? Nancy, you literally had a whole plan to run off with Chris and take my kids. You were going to blindside me. Why should I give you the courtesy of talking this through? I was scared, she insisted. I didn't know how you'd react. You were scared? I repeated. Nancy, if you were scared of me, you wouldn't have been sneaking around behind my back for months. If you were scared of me, you wouldn't have slept in my house, eaten my food, kissed me goodnight, all while screwing another man. She sniffled. I still love you, Mike. That did it. That I let out a bitter laugh. You don't love me, Nancy. You love control. And now that you don't have it anymore, you don't know what to do. She sucked in a sharp breath, and I could tell I had hit the nerve. You're going to regret this, she finally said, her voice ice cold. See you in court, I replied, and hung up. Jake leaned against the counter, smirking. So how'd she take it? I tossed my phone onto the table. Like I expected. First, she tried to manipulate me. Then, when that didn't work, she threatened me. Jake whistled. She's gonna come at you hard, man. I nodded. I know. But I'm ready. For the next few days, I worked non-stop with Callahan that we froze the remaining money in our joint account before Nancy could drain the rest. That we gathered every single message from her and Chris. The ones where they talked about leaving me. Taking my kids. That we collected character statements from friends, teachers, and even our pediatrician. Everyone who could testify that I was a responsible, stable father. I wasn't going to lose my kids without a fight. And then 1 week later Nancy made her next move. Jake and I were eating breakfast when my burner phone buzzed. A new message from Nancy. Nancy, Mike. I'm done playing games. I'm taking this to the next level. I frowned. The next level then, another message. Nancy, I hope you're ready for court, because I have something that's going to destroy you. My stomach twisted. She had something. But what? Jake leaned over. You think she's bluffing? I wasn't sure. Nancy was a liar, but she was also calculated. If she said she had something, she believed it would hurt me. And then, an email popped up from Callahan. Subject, urgent. Nancy's legal team just filed a new motion. I opened it. I read it, and then, for the first time in this entire battle, I actually felt a flicker of fear. Because Nancy wasn't just fighting for custody, she was trying to prove I was an unfit father. She was coming after everything. And she wasn't holding back. I put my phone down and looked at Jake. She's going for the kill. He exhaled. Then you better be ready. I was ready, because now, this wasn't just about custody, this was about survival. Nancy wasn't just fighting for custody, she was trying to destroy me. Callahan's email laid it all out. Nancy had filed an emergency motion, claiming I was an unfit father. Her accusations, that I had kidnapped the kids, that I was unstable and had a history of anger issues. That I had been neglecting them since I took them. Lies. Every single one. But in court, lies can ruin you. Callahan called me immediately. She's playing dirty, Mike. But we can flip this on her. How? I asked, my blood boiling. She's making herself look desperate. We prove that, and she loses credibility. You just need to stay calm and let me handle it. Easier said than done, but if Nancy wanted a war, she was about to get one. That I walked into the courthouse, my jaw clenched, my heart pounding. Nancy was already there, sitting beside her lawyer, fake tears in her eyes. Callahan leaned over to me. Let her play the victim. It'll backfire. The judge entered. The case began. Nancy's lawyer stood first. Your Honor, my client is deeply concerned for her children's well-being. Nancy sniffled. Mike took them in the middle of the night. I was terrified. Lies. Then Callahan stood. Your Honor, we have proof that Mrs. Dawson was planning to take the children and disappear with her lover. He handed the judge the messages. Nancy's face went pale. The judge frowned, reading. Then looked at Nancy. Is this true? She opened her mouth but nothing came out. We had her. Nancy shifted in her seat, eyes darting to her lawyer. She had no excuse. The judge looked unimpressed. Mrs. Dawson, were you planning to take the children without Mr. Dawson's consent? She hesitated. Too long. Her lawyer tried to recover. Your Honor, my client was acting out of fear. Callahan smirked. Fear? Or guilt? Because we also have proof of her affair. He handed over hotel receipts, texts, photos. Nancy's face turned red. The judge sighed. Mrs. Dawson, this does not reflect well on your case. Her lawyer whispered something to her. She nodded, then started crying. Fake. The judge rubbed his temples. Enough. I'll have my decision soon. Nancy wouldn't win this, but I wasn't letting my guard down yet. The courtroom was silent. Nancy wouldn't look at me. The judge cleared his throat. Given the evidence, the court finds Mr. Dawson a fit parent. Temporary custody remains with him. I won, Nancy gasped. Her lawyer whispered frantically, but it was too late. The judge continued. Mrs. Dawson, your attempt to alienate the children is concerning. Future custody arrangements will depend on your cooperation. Nancy looked shattered. Callahan smirked. Told you she'd crack. I exhaled. This wasn't over, but I had the upper hand now. Nancy had played dirty and she lost. Outside the courthouse, Nancy ran after me. Mike, please. Don't do this. Her voice cracked. I turned, calm. Do what, Nancy? Protect my kids. Tears streamed down her face. Real this time. I messed up, okay? But I'm still their mother. I sighed. Then start acting like one. She stared at me, her lips trembling. For the first time, she had no control. Chris pulled up in his car. She hesitated, then, finally, she turned and walked away. I watched her go, knowing one thing for sure: she had lost. A week later, I stood in my lawyer's office, signing the final custody papers. Full custody granted. Nancy would get supervised visitation. She tried to fight, but the judge saw through her. She lost. Chris? Gone. He bailed the second things got tough. Guess he didn't want to play daddy after all. Nancy called once. Begged for another chance. I didn't answer. Instead, I focused on what mattered: Ethan and Olivia. As I tucked them into bed that night, Olivia whispered, I love you, Daddy. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Nancy was the past. My kids were my future, and I wasn't looking back.